Cliff Bombard.
Alan Fritz,
Doug Boyd.
Dick Patello.
Heather Turcott.
And Carol Fitzgerald. All right, gang's all here. So I guess what we thought we'd just do tonight is to go through the draft green sheet that everyone has. I'm hoping everybody also, Cliff had given me a revenue sheet over the weekend that I forwarded to folks today. I'm hoping that you saw that at some point.
yes, and good news.
Right, right. So does that sound like a plan? Doug, did you?
I think that makes sense. I mean, we haven't done gone through the budget with a once over yet.
Mhm.
Why don't we do that? See if we pick up any, obvious mistakes or discrepancies.
Well,
We can-
Christine got most of the things that I had pointed out that needed attention. There's only a couple items left.
Okay, that's good. So that maybe that makes the most sense. We'll just go maybe just account by account, we'll look at the total, and if anybody's got questions about any of the specific line items, then we can note that. I did try to go through today a little bit, a few notes that I took as well. That seem good?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, well, the first one is the accountant, and Cliff did send some revised numbers after Kristen sent out the sheet. So Cliff, I just want to clarify, the salary is the same.
Yeah.
The assistant's
Well-
now $6,000.
Yeah, because I think it's going to be plenty of money.
Okay. And then
That's-
the expenses, because of the, the assistant is 6,000.
Okay.
And then the expenses is down to 12,000 because of the,
Well,
difference in the overhead?
it's actually a little bit of an increase over 2 years ago. One of the reasons for that is that Richard and I are encouraging an interim audit. And also we have a OPEB audit that will have to be included in that as well.
okay.
What's the number?
12,000? I thought the one I sent out, I thought had that number. I'm sorry, 6,000 and 6,000 for assistant, 12,000 for expenses, and 7,000 on the software. For a total of 60,419.
All right.
And the
So that-
increase on the 12,000, Cliff, is for the audit.
Well, yeah, for an audit, we want to get that we haven't been doing.
That's
It's a lot
fine.
easier, to do it. It's an
Okay.
interim. It'll be cash and receivables. That's all it'll be. And then the OPEB audit in there too.
Mhm. So that total is down about $5,000 from what we have on our first draft.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then advisory is 5612, so that's clerical, and then our $200 of expenses. That's our printer cartridges, I think. The Board of Appeals, 5712. And then we've got assessors at 100,727. So my only concern with this one is that when they came in with salaries that were higher than just the 2.5%. I don't know if anybody recalls that.
Yeah, and weren't they gonna go back to Bob on that?
They were, so I don't know where that landed. And so if Bob hasn't kind of blessed that, then I don't know if that will happen given, what the select board has asked him to do. I think we need to be cognizant that that's different than the rest of the staffing. Just to keep an eye on that, I guess, for right now.
Right,
Yeah.
and essentially they were looking for a change in the grade on that, weren't they?
I don't know if that it was a change in the grade.
Kind of under the old system of steps and grades and.
Yeah, my notes, I don't really have great notes. I'd have to look back in our minutes to see if there's anything remarkable. Heather, do you remember anything about that?
I do believe that they felt she was underpaid compared to the rest of the world, I think, basically because what she does.
Yeah, it's so so specialized. I know that they're always very concerned about losing her.
Right. And I don't remember for clerical. I think maybe it was just that, again, they weren't, definitely not paying compared to other places.
Okay, so we'll do a little follow-up on that, but we'll leave it for right now. Does that seem okay?
Yeah, that's in the 4.22 line.
Correct. Yeah, they both, the
And
principal
the assessor,
and the clerical, the principal assessor and the clerical line, both of those.
Right.
they're over 4%.
I mean, the bottom line is it's, maybe like a $1,500 or $1,600 difference, but we just want to be
Yeah.
clear of what we're doing.
You are going to have kind of a difficult time if you treat them differently than every other department in this time of austerity.
That's right. So, but at that time, Norm thought he was going to go to Bob as the town administrator, who was going to, kind of weigh in on those things. So I don't know if that conversation happened and where that ended. So we'll look at that. All right, then we're on to building department. That's $119,048, which is what they requested.
Right, that was also the salary issue on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wasn't here. So what's the big increase? Putting more time in?
Yeah, it looks like more hours
Okay.
for both.
Or after that, he also got his certification from the state or something.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So it was a combination of increasing his worth and his hours.
So do we have to do any other checks on that?
So, I mean, I think we should. I think this was a question we were going to ask the selectmen. I remember at our last in-person meeting, we had talked about our next meeting, inviting the selectmen in to ask them a number of questions. And this was on the list of things to ask them about is, what their, how supportive they were of this particular budget. I mean, it does fall under them. So I would think that they would have an opinion about the hours necessity and the rate increase as well.
And my recollection is it was at the direction of the select board that he was doing the extra work or the additional work.
What about the clerical? So 2 years ago, that clerical number jumped, well, last year it jumped, doubled. Is that just more clerical time?
Yes. Yeah. And this year it looks like they're looking for 4 more hours a week. I could look back at last year. There was an hours jump the year before.
I just needed to clarify what the jump was from
Yeah,
FY to FY20.
Yeah, if I may, it's also, she seems to be handling the clerical part of the water situation.
Oh, the stormwater stuff.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
The stormwater, she's been handling a lot of the clerical end of that.
Well, that's kind of my question. They were talking about throwing stormwater money at the building department, but I haven't heard anybody tell me exactly what the workload and exactly what they do in stormwater. Somebody's going to have to figure out what the workload is. I'm certainly not seeing a lot of permits issued, because they turn over the permit fees. So I don't know what the activity level, and somebody's going to have to justify that in my mind, at least.
Okay.
Is that the jump this year, Dick, or the jump from 19 to 20?
No, the jump from 1920 to 1920 was just a matter of they claim that there's a whole lot more work than they were getting paid for. This one, for 21, they're saying that's because of stormwater management, and I just don't have any idea what activity they have to do. My questions have gone somewhat unanswered.
So how many hours does this person work now?
Right now, the building inspector, which is
I'm talking
5.15,
clerical.
20, 24.
And the request is to 28.
Okay.
And then right now, the building inspector is 34 and the request is to go to 40.
And remember on the clerical, in 2019, it was being done in 10 hours. 6 years ago, it was being done in I think, 4 hours a week.
Okay.
And we had a part-time inspector.
Right, so we have a full-time inspector now,
Yes.
but we had a part-time inspector 20 years ago when I built my house, and a lot of houses were being built back then. And we have no houses being built now. We have a full-time inspector. Okay.
Yeah, but he also has the enforcement.
Well, my point is, we should have had a full-time when I was building my house.
Well,
I know there's stuff on my street that should never have happened.
noted.
All right, so that's a question for the board then, for the Board of Selectmen. Okay. All right, county retirement, kind of, that's the larger number, assuming that if we can pay it sooner, it'll be a little bit lower than that.
Right, just so everyone's aware, the number that we're putting in here, the 603,730, that's the full assessment from the retirement board. If we pay it by the end of July, we get a discount. I don't have the paper in front of me, but it's like a $6,000 or an $8,000 discount. Dick and I had exchanged emails earlier as to what number to carry, and decided we'll carry the higher number. If we can pay it sooner, then we'll realize those savings. But by carrying the higher number, it gives him more flexibility with regards to cash flow. And who knows what cash flow is going to be here in the next few months.
So paying it sooner, Dick, is only a matter of cash flow.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a pretty good deal. We make about 4.5% on the money for paying the half 6 months early. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to do it, but we have, if you go back historically, we've consistently appropriated the full amount of the assessment.
It's okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, insurance, total is 444,800. And then law and claim.
Do we have anybody on unemployment now?
Yes.
Mhm.
And so is that number that we're carrying going to be sufficient
No.
for the current
even-
year, or for next year, or for both?
For both at this point.
So should we increase that 10 then?
Well, maybe we put a circle around that one, because we really don't know if we're going to be laying any people off.
Right.
But right now, I think we had 2 on Dick, but I think we only have 1 now, right?
I haven't got an update. All I know is the 2 people that were terminated were on last time I knew.
Yeah. So, and it's dollar for dollar.
So these are not as a result of any situation with the virus or anything?
No.
They're like leftovers from past things, right?
Last year, we had 2 terminations for cause,
Okay,
and they're collecting.
okay.
All right. So we'll check as to what that cost is running currently and what we got to be looking for the next year.
Mhm.
Okay.
You do realize that what will have a large effect on that number is what the selectmen decide to do with dispatch.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because that could be 5 claims.
I hate to bring up dispatch this early in the conversation, but so if we do have to lay some people off, is that included in anything that we put in the dispatch line, or how are we gonna handle that?
Well, unemployment is paid out of 7.3.
Exactly.
Now, I don't know what the union contract is, if there's any kind of severance or anything, but I imagine that would come out of the police budget.
So I guess I guess my question then is, Dick and everybody else, I mean, has this all been sort of laid out, like where the money's gonna go so we don't sit there and say, well, we're gonna save X amount of dollars, where in fact, we're not saving X amount of dollars, we're saving Y because we've got to pay unemployment and all this other stuff. So, I mean, has that all been sort of calculated?
No,
No,
Not to my knowledge.
Very, very doubtful.
no,
Okay,
and
so-
I actually sent some questions in to the board tonight, just to have them consider, just me personally. And one of them was not necessarily about unemployment, but was about those dispatchers have already been told that there's no, that the Westcom is basically fully staffed, or will be by the time they're released from Hampden. And so, one of my questions is, what are we going to do to keep them on until the end? There's no
Okay, so-
incentive for them to stay on until the end.
And the last time that we spoke, there was talk about the fact that Chief Farnsworth would not want to leave his. So, I mean, is anybody, this gets into my frustration. So who do we go to? Do we talk to Bob Markle and say, Bob, we need to know? So could you talk to Farnsworth? Could you talk to whoever has to be? What's the plan? That's what I'm trying to get at.
May I interject here?
Go ahead, Alan.
The police chief has laid out how much cost he takes out of his budget, and that's been published. And Dick has gone through what the effect of getting rid of the dispatch in Hampden will do to overhead costs. So we have a number right now. Whether that needs to be adjusted in any way, I don't know, but we've got number already as to what would come out according to the people who are in charge of the accounts.
All right, we need a summary of that to show by line item what it is, because I've seen bits and pieces, but nothing all put together.
Yeah, I second that, Heather. We've seen it, bits and pieces, fragmented, but it should be easy enough to put on one sheet in terms of anticipated savings, anticipated costs, and net.
Well, there was a long series of emails that went back and forth, and it is documented line by line by both the police chief and by Dick for the overheads.
But
And
the
it should
point,
be
Alan,
easy
I
to
think,
put together in a single
yeah, but
document.
Heather's point is right on. Let's see it on paper. I don't want to go through 20 emails that I don't have access to. I want to see a plan on paper.
But to answer your question, Paul, the responsibility for this is with the select board.
So Dick, have you seen, are we accurate in that there's a summary of what the potential overhead cost reductions will be?
Yeah, what I did was, what I sent to Jeff in February was, what the retirement costs, the OPEC costs, et cetera. Ironically, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen asked me for that same information this morning, and I sent it to him. So yeah, we're talking about a magnitude of 120,000, something like that. I don't have the document in front of me. I'll be happy to send it to you, but it is only a estimate on what we would save in addition to salary by terminating those positions. It is not an analysis of what the cost of terminating those positions is, i.e. unemployment or severance or anything like that, because I have absolutely no knowledge on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But that goes back to something I think I wrote a few weeks ago. When you lay one person off, what's the cost of that? And someone's got to be responsible for that. I'm not sure I'm very comfortable thinking that the 3 selectmen are going to do it. So I'm guessing that somebody's got to do it. And I would think that the person who's working with the selectmen would be the person who would organize it and give us the numbers. So,
Hold on, Paul, did I just see a hand go up?
pardon?
Did I just see a hand go up?
Yeah.
Oh, Alan?
Yes.
No, volunteer.
Volunteer, okay. Listening to some Board of Selectmen minutes, they discussed whether there would be any severance pay due according to the contract with those people. And their conclusion was that no severance pay was legally due to them when they terminated.
Yeah, but See, this is what we always pull teeth to try to get information from everybody, and it never works out. We need to know what makes up their cost savings, and then we need to go through it and add what we know is that they didn't include.
Great. I agree. And part of what I asked them tonight also, and they're talking about this right now as we speak, I think, is, will the police union now want to renegotiate? Because if you pull the dispatchers out of there, then the police officers are going to be responsible for some of the other work that the dispatchers did. And I just wonder if, doing HR like I do, whether the police will think that this is a change in the terms and conditions of their job, and will they want to renegotiate, and will there be some additional costs to the police contract because we pull the dispatchers out?
Yeah, but my guess is they're going to want a clerical person of some sort.
So
Whether,
and that may be
Yeah.
true, and that's another cost on top of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, people won't be happy with a dark station that they just built.
Mm-mm.
For $3 million.
They're clear. They're not. If you saw Facebook today, they are not. So I guess the question is, we'll know tonight whether they're going to move forward with that decision, and then they've got to, give us some answers right away, pretty quickly. And if they delay it, then we have an opportunity to get those questions answered, whether they're going to explore Wilbraham or continue to explore Chicopee. The same issues may be, relevant. So I guess we'll
Hands up.
go ahead, Alan.
Listening to their meeting on Zoom last week, they committed that this week, tonight, they would make their decision on dispatch because they're getting close to the deadline for Westcom. And it certainly looks like they're going to go to Westcom, and they committed to make their decision tonight.
Yeah, and I think they're getting a lot of public outcry about doing that without a lot of public conversation about it. They had a public hearing about the trash fees, and they haven't had a public hearing about the dispatch option. So I think they're getting a lot of people today, at least, asking them to postpone that decision. So I don't know if it'll really happen, and I don't know whether that May deadline is a firm deadline or not. Every other deadline in the state has been moved because of the pandemic, and you'd think that this might be one of those that could be postponed given the environment that we're all working in. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as always before. Everybody thought this was, an issue that was put to bed, and then nothing was heard, and then all of a sudden they're making a decision on it, and everybody's like, what is going on?
Here comes Dick.
Oh, good heavens.
Hey.
Hi, Dick.
Hey, I thought I looked bad on video. Then Padulo got on.
Paul, now you know why I'm not on video.
Well, you want to hear a tech tip? So if you are, I used this tablet for Zoom last week and everything worked fine for another group. And I could not figure out why it said I didn't have any cameras or microphones until I realized that the tablet was connected to the work computer on the virtual private network. So it was trying to microphone on my desktop in my office.
Oh, jeez. That's not where you are.
At least I've solved the mystery.
There you go. So, I mean, clearly we're not going to be able to answer the question tonight, and, something's happening as we speak. What it is, I'm not sure, but
And so for our
regardless of
purposes,
the way it
then,
goes.
let's just make a note here on 7.3 and find out what the decision is tonight and what the implications are for that line.
Mhm.
Well, I think Alan also watched the meeting from last week, like I did, and it's clear that they're talking about using the savings, whatever it is, from dispatch to pay for the ambulance.
And
But
my
they
only
don't-
thing is I don't want to see an inflated number unless we know exactly what the whole I mean, I'm not saying I'm for or against it. I'm just saying that I would think it's only fair to have it all laid out.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that difficult to have the true cost of this thing put
No.
down on a single sheet of paper,
No,
summarized. And
Yeah, I'll send you people the email that I gave Jeff and then Don with the hidden savings, if you will, the overhead savings, but they're going to have to lay out a plan for you for the transition costs.
Right.
well, it's not only us. I mean, when it gets to town meeting, I mean, people want to know. So
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Right.
that's
Right.
an issue. Carol, you meant I don't want to belabor it. Do you really think that this requires the selectmen to have a open meeting on why they're doing this?
No, I was just saying that that's what if you look at the Facebook chatter on a couple of Hampden sites today, a lot of chatter that people wanted an opportunity to listen and understand what the due diligence was, what people had learned. And they were feeling, especially right now when the meetings are only on Zoom and people can't, really participate, that folks were feeling kind of left out. So, how they respond to that, I'm not sure.
Okay.
If they consider it. So,
I think ought to be some very good communications, because there'd be a lot of questions about the dispatch moving and the ambulance. And there ought to be a lot of communication to acquaint the people before town meeting, because it's going to be a hard discussion otherwise at town meeting to cover both of them and all the ramifications. And they ought to prepare well ahead of time with
yeah,
publications.
but the dispatch question isn't really going to become before town meeting. They're going to decide now. And
That is true, because all they're doing is eliminating costs. They're not adding costs, and
Well-
that's in their prerogative, isn't
well,
it?
the dispatch issue comes before town meeting indirectly through the budget, through the line items.
Right.
I mean, whether it's in the police salary items or whether it's in unemployment, I mean, it is going to be, the cost of dispatch is going to be reflected in the budget. And
Right.
people that are knowledgeable are going to be aware of that.
Right. It's going to be a shifting of some costs. It's not just going to be an elimination of some
Right.
costs.
Right.
So,
Well, most of it will be a pure elimination. And the police chief has already done that line by line item by line item. And Dick investigated the so-called hidden costs. I call them overhead costs. Dick, are you still comfortable with those figures you put together for the so-called hidden cost?
Yeah, that's fine as far as what the savings will be going forward. But again, it doesn't address any of the transition costs. To
Right.
Doug's point about the town meeting appropriation, the town meeting could raise more money for police salaries, but that doesn't mean they have to spend it on dispatch. The one place where you might have a catch-22 is something like the unemployment claim.
Mhm.
If they actually need an appropriation to make this work. I'm not sure they do. I think to Carol's point about what was happening on Facebook, I think that Mr. Davenport at least is very aware that the natives are restless.
yeah.
All right. Hey, we're not going to solve this tonight, so why
Let's
don't
move on.
why don't we move along?
All right. So, so 8.1 is long claims. So that's 65,000. Looks like it's up a little bit. We haven't asked for a report lately in terms of what they've been spending that on. And I know that the school item is separate, but it could be wise for us, since we did that a couple of years ago, to ask them for kind of an accounting of what those legal expenses are being used for. I don't know how anybody else feels about that.
Well, that's just one of those things that if we had a little bit more information, we could see what the trend of legal has been. So, I mean, do we need 65,000? Are we going to spend 65,000 this year? Can we get by with 60 as we did in what we spent in FY19? Those are the kind of questions, but I don't have enough to know.
Right.
It all depends.
Oh, go ahead, Heather. Sorry.
It all depends on what's going on with the school, I would guess. I have not seen an update in a long time.
Well, the school money's in a different article though, Heather. It's not in this 8.1. I believe there's about 30,000 left in that appropriation.
Okay, I thought that was the one.
And I do know that there are a couple of kind of personnel related things that were happening. So maybe that's what some of this increase is for. And, you know, so I think something within the police department and something within town hall. So it could be that that's what they needed, but we can just ask for further explanation. I think that would be wise.
Yeah, I mean, we have heard from every department how everything is more complicated, everything takes more time, everything is more technical. I mean, you know, unfortunately, it's just a question of how much that legal line is going to go to. I mean, for years we carried, what was it, 25,000, I think? It's only in the past 6 or 8 years that number has been going up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But, you know, we've been hearing from all the departments how, you know, they need more time for the administrative work. They have more questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to be able to reduce it back to 25, but I think those days are long gone.
That number doesn't represent, Dick, a retainer, does it? Is that actual hours that are used by the town council?
That's correct. We just pay for billable hours.
So
But-
we had $60,000 worth of billable hours?
Yes.
Well, we've been running over 50
Mm-hmm.
Really?
for the last few years. Well, you know, everybody's in CYA. You know, rather than make a decision, any board will say, let's run this by town council.
That's right.
So, you know, there's another $700.
Well, because they've all been challenged so frequently.
Not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so say it's 60,000, say it's, I don't know, $300 an hour. I don't know what the rate is. That's 200 hours. It's not a lot, you know, given that some things might take, you know, quite a bit of time to manage. So,
Well, I'm just going to tell you that when I ran your school district, I never spent that kind of money.
Well, Paul, the school district has spent over 125,000 just on the lawsuit alone.
Well, that's, I mean, I'm just telling you when I was there.
Right. It can be done
back
differently.
when
I
you were in
agree.
charge of the school committee, the town's legal budget was 20 to 25 grand a year. In the last 6 years, it has ballooned.
Mhm.
It just seems like a big number. So that's okay. Let's move on.
all right. So then we got the moderator at $100.
Outrageous.
Yeah. And planning
Are you
board.
representing Bob in this?
No, it's Rick.
Rick,
Oh,
no.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Is that $100 of expenses or is that $100 in his salary?
Expenses.
Expenses.
He gets paid what we get paid. All right, planning board, 27,450. Registers, 16,400.
I don't have 27,000. I got 26 something.
That's just a clerical.
I've got 27,450 on the total planning.
Oh, I do on the total plan. I'm sorry. Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just trying to read the bottom number.
Okay. I'm
And then
sorry.
the board of registrars is 16,400.
Again, so that's the new election coming up?
Yep.
Yep.
That and Eva also indicated that the early voting costs, I forget how much, but there's a cost associated with that because she has to make somebody available for a certain number of hours and a certain number of days.
Yeah, she's got all the different elections and early voting all figured into that.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay, so selectmen, $146,850. The one thing that I didn't see was they had a line. I looked at all the, you know, they submit things and it's not as orderly as the rest of them. Was that they didn't, the website for $2,500 didn't get figured into the budget anywhere. And it seems like that maybe should be a new line item. Is that, are you sensing that that needs to be a new line, Cliff?
If it is, I would tend to put it down under IT, a
Okay,
little bit further on down.
okay.
I
Well,
could
there-
add a line, I could add a line in there, which is down a little bit. I forgot what account that is, but I would tend to put that under IT.
You might want to ask the selectmen when you talk to them if the IT line already includes that.
There were two separate numbers in their request. One was the 20,000 for IT and one was the 2,500 for the website. They were distinct in their request.
Okay.
What is the large increase for expenses that happened between FY 19 and 20?
For what?
Selectmen went from $1,800 to 25,000.
Well, that was when the town administrator came in and
Okay.
wanted a little flexibility with spending some money on some, for different
But the
departments.
town administrator is in under 12.0.
No,
That's
no,
Salary.
later.
it was just that the fact that that person came into being and wanted some flexibility with some spending out of that office.
Yeah, incidentals in the townhouse.
Oh. And
Well,
where is the town
expenses went up.
administrator's salary?
It's a little further down. It's a separate line.
Okay.
19.0.
Oh, 19, okay.
The biggest thing for salaries is the stormwater management is in there, and that's 45,500. That's a huge part of the increase.
Yeah, and the good news was that Ty and Bond came in with a lower figure than they had originally estimated, so hopefully that holds.
Mhm.
Just out of curiosity, why is that sitting in the selectmen's budget rather than like DPW or something?
Well, there's a long answer to that.
But don't give it to me. I don't need it. I don't need it.
The bottom line is that the DPW didn't think that it belonged with them.
Okay.
All right. So we're good with selectmen. We'll move to tax collector, 72,421. The town clerk is to 72,776. So there's just an increase in some hours related to voter registration from one of my notes in the clerical. That's why that looks a little bit higher. Town report, $3,000.
Did we ever get a request on that, or are we just putting in what was there last year?
We rolled that over.
Okay.
Do you
Um,
think that in this green sheet over to the side, to a column to the side, we could put in little notes? Not to be published, but just for our own benefit, that are referring back every time? Our old notes?
So what she's saying is if Cliff gets rid of his line account numbers and he adds another 18, does he have room to put a blank column so we can keep notes in? That's what Heather's asking.
Yeah,
Cliff?
I mean, just like for the clerical, for example, they went up $6,000. It'd just be nice to know that, okay, it's X amount of hours, or it's a new grade, or it's something.
Cliff, can you do that?
Yeah, but I'm not the one that knows what the requests were.
So I
But I
mean,
can make a,
I think we certainly
Is
could
it-
we could do it. We could also, if that's just a working copy for us, then that would, I don't see why we couldn't do that.
I thought,
But is it just an Excel spreadsheet, or does this get downloaded?
this Excel, it can be downloaded.
I know, but are you downloading the information, or is Kristen actually typing it in?
No, she's typing it.
Well, she's typing in some of the numbers, but I typed in the historical numbers.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
not, yeah, there's not a download from the system or anything, Heather.
Carol?
so that's why, and, just on the column to the, column AL, well, I'm on AL, AM, just put a note, 6 hours more a week, or whatever the number is. Or do this because this expense is coming due to the audit, things like that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can
Carol?
talk to Kristen about that. What's up,
Carol?
Ellen?
And then you carry that over every year. You hide that, you can hide the column. So for next year, we would just, again, put, the new notes and then hide a column for the old notes.
Yep.
Carol?
Yeah.
We have those explanations on the requests, and that's where I got mine. I just went through the requests and looked at their explanations. This put a lot of work on entering that information on these green sheets. I suggest everybody go back and look at the request if they have a question on it.
Yeah, I'm not saying every little detail. I'm just saying some of the big jumps. I mean, it's up to you. just easier if it's always on one page. But
Right. and,
whatever.
you know, I
Suggestion.
mean, I usually do that for myself because at town meeting, if something comes up, I want to know what the answer is to why the jump. So I have those notes. So I don't think it would be hard for us to manage that, Heather, and then just kind of hide the columns when she needs to go print or something. So I can talk to
Yeah,
Chris.
yeah, that's what I'm doing now as we go through it.
All right. So treasurer at 73,895.
Agreed.
All right, since he's sitting right
Their
here.
money's worth.
Veterans benefits, 20,000. Town administrator,
Did we get a-
100,000.
Did we get a request on that, or are we just rolling over what we had before?
For both of those came in with the selectmen's budgets.
Yeah, that's their suggested number, Alan.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I suspect that may end up being low.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was some more activity in that account in the coming year.
I have a question on the town administrator. They had planned moving forward, and I think they were well behind on either doing that or putting it out for offers or anything like that. Are we going to have a gap in there, and that this $100,000 isn't appropriate for the year? In other words, could this go down?
I thought you were going to ask if it could go up.
That's all. I would assume it would go up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where they're at with the process. I don't know if they're,
I think
Why
it's a
don't we ask
legitimate
where they're
concern, Alan, but I think given the uncertainty that we're probably better off carrying the 100. And if it has to be adjusted in the fall, then we can do that. But in the meantime, this holds a place.
Okay,
I mean, does that make sense?
it's all right with me.
yep. All right, Academy Hall maintenance at 4,500. Cemetery commission at 39,049. Conservation at 34,756.
By the way, that
I-
increase in the cemetery is the fence, right?
No.
No, was it driveway? What was it?
I'm not exactly sure because the maintenance is the lawn work. I know that there's an issue with the water coming off.
Yeah, that was a drainage issue, right?
Yeah,
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 that's what Tim said, that they wanted to put a berm in down there.
yeah.
Golf
Right.
ball house.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, they're gonna do some curbing, yeah. Okay, so conservation, 34,756.
Carol,
Yeah,
Carol, I have a comment on that. Ted Siebert talked to the Board of Selectmen. They've been trying to get a clerk. Well, it's more than that. They need a more technical person. They haven't had anybody in that position up until just recently. And the person they have in it now really doesn't have the background. And they've advertised and they can't get it. So this number of 34,000 some for clerical is if they could get a person. Right now, they don't have a person. And they've tried to get in combination with, because it's a technical job, they haven't been getting anybody that's interested in a half-time job. And they've been checking around the different communities, but nothing has happened on this. So
Well,
this is a number in
that will
case,
probably change, Alan, given what's going on.
in what way?
I suspect that there will be some applications where there wouldn't have been previously,
What makes you think that?
well,
because we're looking at unemployment in the 20% range.
Well, Ted says they need somebody with expertise and they haven't been able to find anybody that'll take the job unless it's a full-time job.
well, if we don't have a full-time job, we can't give somebody a full-time job. If we don't have So,
But we have to have work in that because the volunteer committee doesn't know all the ins and out, and it's getting more and more complicated technically to do that job. And they need somebody that really has experience in that area.
And
Is
the
this
selectmen
is
are
this the
paid to solve
possibility of a
that.
sheer? I'm sorry, Dick.
I said, then the selectmen are the people who are paid to solve that problem.
Okay, I was only going to ask, is this a possibility of a shared service job with another town? I mean,
I think there was some discussion with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission having somebody available as a, like a resource, is my recollection.
Well,
Yeah, it was to share, a bunch of towns would use this person.
That's it.
Ted said that the town administrator had gone and talked to East Longmeadow, who has a part-time job, but he's not interested in also picking up Hampden, so that fell through. And they haven't been found anybody else that is willing to bid on a part-time job.
not a lot of money. I mean, you're asking for people who have an expertise, have had
Yes.
education and training, and even on a part-time basis, $34,000 doesn't buy you a lot today.
Right.
No, and it's in for 30 hours, which is, a significant number of hours. I would consider that full-time, and it's a benefited position. So I think it could be attractive. I don't know if the rate is right, but I think to Doug's point, we're going to see a lot of people enter the candidate pool. I think that hadn't been, when we can all get out, walk outside.
Yeah, I think we have to carry that number unless we hear something differently.
I agree to that. I'm just pointing out what the situation is.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, no, they've been struggling for a while. They sure have.
A year.
So the transfer station at 25,000. School building repairs at 15,000. Total library 147,605. Town events at 1,200.
When you do the school building repairs,
Mhm.
what does that go?
What would I be talking?
That covers any capital repairs to the school under the terms of the lease. The town is responsible for the first 15,000.
First 15,000.
I'm in a meeting with the board of advisory.
I always thought it was the other way around. I always thought it was the school district budget was responsible up to a certain amount, and then the town was responsible for anything over a specific amount.
Well, we got away with that for a few years, huh?
You got away with it. Yeah, you did. Because I always thought it was just the opposite, that we were responsible. And then if it got, I think it was 5 or 10, and then if it went over that, then we had to go to the town for it, for the difference. Well, that's interesting. Okay.
All right. So office equipment, this goes under the selectmen's budget. So this is 72,000. So this is where Cliff, I think, thought was gonna maybe add the website in this section.
Right, 29.6.
Okay.
So we don't know if it's there or not.
It showed
Yeah,
up
it
in
is.
two
Yeah,
different requests
Yeah,
from the selectmen in the budget. There was a specific one that said website at 2,500 and something else distinct that said IT, information technology, for the 20,000.
that's my recollection, yeah.
All right. Parks and Rec, 62,753.
Carol,
Yeah.
when you're asking questions on the selectmen, I'm curious about the supply budget. Whether that's just one of those random numbers that Mary threw in to make sure she had extra room to work, or whether they really are using $10,000 worth of supplies versus the previous 3,600.
Okay. And I wonder if we could get a look at what the spending has been the last couple of years
That's why I'd love to see another column, at least one other column, to pick up stuff like that, because I think Dick's right.
Mhm.
Well, I agree with you, Paul, but what Carol's asking for is what's been spent this year to date.
Mhm.
Okay, but even that, Dick, I mean,
Yeah, I think both points of information would be helpful.
Okay.
Could I interject here?
Sure.
Don't forget that at the end of the year, we sit down and we transfer money between accounts that have money available. There's no way on this thing that we have here to reflect whether or not let's say that 10,000, let's say we spent 10,000 out of that account last year. There's no way to reflect on this whether or not that was a transfer from another expense to make everything come out whole.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the problems, that looking at what was spent last year, because especially when they zero out, it could have been that we were just using up the available funds in those to cover the hind end of an account that was about to be overdrawn.
But we could look, Cliff, at the transfers that were done at the end of the year. Either
Yes,
the
you can.
reserve- So we
Yep.
could,
Kind of break those out.
Yep.
so we'd
And-
have to look in two different places, I think.
Well, I can print those out because we did them all at once.
Yes, we did, yeah.
There's one journal entry that did them all.
Yeah, so if you could print that journal entry out, it should have, I'll show where and to, so we'll have an idea.
You already have that on a report, so it's just a matter of sending out that report that you listed all those.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take a look at that and circle that one.
Because when we say that they used up all the money last year, or they didn't use up all the money, well, we did a lot of internal moving of money. I'm sure internal movement of available funds,
Mhm.
which made accounts look like they were all used up when in fact they weren't.
Yep. Yeah, that makes
Yeah, and
sense.
actually we need a certain amount of flexibility for that.
Mhm.
You do, but on the other hand, you want a budget that is a true reflection of what really got spent. So
And what
if-
people need.
if we didn't spend $10,000 in one column, but part of that 10 went to help another column, then we ought to be able to show what happened. So that way, when we do this budget, we're not just putting numbers in that never really occurred. So, you could get caught in a situation where if you level fund this 10,000, but in effect, you only spent 6 and you move 4, then if that stays at 10, and then you go and you now increase the other item by 4, you're compounding your problem and you're actually spending more than you really need. So I just think that there's got to be a way to track some of that. So Cliff,
There is.
anything you can do to help us at the end of the year would be really helpful.
Yeah, the year-end report that I do for June 30th or July 15th does show the transfers in and transfers out of the specific accounts. But it's easier tracked by just looking at the journal entry, which we run out, is signed, and we post. So that's extremely easy. So my problem is that I can't email out of that account. I'll have to figure out how to email out of that. So I'll figure it out.
Thanks, Cliff. All right, so Parks and Rec 62,753, and then townhouse maintenance. I think that in this first custodial, I think Kristen just transposed the wrong number over here. I think it really should be 19,000. That's what's in the selectmen's budget. I think she picked up 30,000, which was just the line underneath it. So we should change that 30 to 19.
Yeah, because that's a contract.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was just just a clerical issue.
Okay,
And then the other ones are 30 and then 40,000. So then the new total would be 89,000 at for total townhouse maintenance. And then we've got our new ambulance line of 330,000.
and we need to get a lot more information on that. For instance, I don't know whether the selectmen have signed a contract with them or not. I think someone has said, I think Doug said that he thinks they have. And I wonder about whether they really had the authority to do that, but I guess they've talked to the legal and the legal says they do. But when is we're running very late. When can the action actually have in place their ambulance, their trailer at the police place so they are ready to start the service? So we didn't need to know when will service start and when do we start paying? I can well see that they wouldn't have their equipment in place for a couple months after the 1st of July. But we need more information on that, so we put in the right figure here.
Well, as of now, I don't necessarily disagree, other than that the answer to those questions are operational issues for the select board and the town administrator.
That may be, but what do we put in for the,
Well, the information that we have is July 1, we have an ambulance starting at $330,000 a year. So for purposes of our budget, I suggest we carry this number, and if we have to adjust it afterwards, then we do.
So they don't have to, or they wouldn't put this on the warrant per se, we would just vote it in the budget?
Yeah,
That's-
that's the way we've done it in the past. The ambulance, and several years ago, we appropriated a very small amount every year. But that contract they signed is definitely, and I confirmed it, is definitely subject to appropriation.
Right, so are we going to, if the town voted down on that, does the whole budget get scrapped?
Nope, just that.
Okay,
Yeah, I think the way that, that Rick and Bob in the past have been doing the budget is that well, actually, maybe not. They've been doing it on each subtotal, not each department.
right,
Yeah, we could ask them to do a separate vote on this just to keep it clean.
Yeah.
Well,
'cause-
Well, functionally, if that number's in your recommendation column, then the motion would be for that $330,000, and anybody can get up and attempt to amend it. And that would be mechanically how it would work.
Okay,
okay.
so they'd amend it down to whatever 0 or whatever other number they wanted.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. that
Yeah,
makes
but
sense.
I guess I get confused when we put, certain things on the warrant to circumvent having to vote down something of the budget.
Well, I think
Back and like that.
I think the difference, Heather, is that when we have, one-time expenditures, we like to keep them out of the operational budget. But, the ambulance is not going to be, this is going to be a recurring expense now.
Okay. All right,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I appreciate what you're saying, but Doug, so was the fire department, full-time personnel, and we put that on a warrant article. It's really a political decision that the selectmen are making, and that's their prerogative. Mechanically, it can be handled either way.
Mhm.
Right, it just gets confusing. I mean, just for me thinking about it, well, what makes this go on the budget versus not being voted for as a special warrant because it's so much money?
You put way too much value in consistency, Heather.
I know. Shame on me.
Carol?
Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
If that contract has been signed and is conditional on the vote of the town meeting, are we expecting that in 15 days from town meeting to July 1, that the action will have the ability to get an ambulance, put up their temporary building, and be operational on July 1? I say they don't, they can't possibly do that.
Well, that's, again, something that the board should have been discussing with them in terms of their preparedness to, follow through on the contract. I haven't seen the contract to know whether that says on July 1, they will be up and ready to go.
Well, shouldn't we ask the Board of Selectmen to fill us in on that and when we should start this? And is that $330,000 still a good number?
I would
It's-
suggest
it's-
that they probably have a temporary situation, Alan, where they would still have an ambulance available for the town. It may not be permanently set up in the police department, but if they're going to start the contract on July 1, that they're required to be ready to do however they have to do it. I don't care if they sit someone out in the middle of the parking lot at St. Mary's. They just got to have it done.
Right.
Plain and simple, but it's up to the selectmen to do that. I mean, as a private citizen, you certainly can, call Don Davenport and say, hey, what's going on? So I kind of agree with Doug said. It's not our job to do that. I'm a little bit concerned about what Cliff said, though, because I think Heather asked a good question. So if there comes to be a number of people in the audience who want to see the fire department run the ambulance service, will the whole budget go down?
Not the whole budget. No.
Well, why wouldn't it? I mean,
Because when they read Article 2, which is the budget,
yep,
it says each line item is a specific appropriation unto
Okay.
itself.
okay, so then they could just vote that down.
Right.
Someone would have to have a motion to strike line 34.0.
Well, they'd have to amend the number.
Right, okay.
To zero.
And then if we supplied the ambulance to the fire department, they'd increase their budget, so to get the ambulance. So that's all doable in that, but it's going to be a difficult situation.
Yeah,
One other
procedurally,
item
it'd be a
on this.
nightmare.
Yeah, one other item on this. I believe Cliff had said that this ambulance, and we had the possibility of getting some money back to offset some of this initial payment of $330,000, that it should be an enterprise zone. You still believe that, Cliff?
No. It should be an enterprise event when there's enough revenues to cover the expense without an appropriation. We are a long ways from that. And with all the numbers I've seen, I don't suspect that we'll be getting any money back from them for a while, a long while. So this is, if we get any money back, it would go in as an estimated receipt. So no, to quick answer, at this point, no way I would recommend an enterprise fund.
Okay,
All right, I'm gonna move on from ambulance. Gasoline, $60,000.
Is it, with the price of gas, is that I mean, really, I mean, although OPEC voted today to cut production by 10 million gallons per day to try to boost the price back up, but I'm just out of curiosity, I'm just thinking that I'm not going to say we can save a hell of a lot of money. We'll leave it alone, but just seems to be one of those numbers that just got thrown out there. I guess that's my point.
There's been a lot of volatility in that line over the last several years, Paul.
Yep. Okay.
do we, I don't know, do we have a contract and is it tied to the price and adjusted based on price, or what is it? But I sure hope they filled up the tank now.
Yeah.
All right, street lighting, 23,000. COA, 156,790.
The only additional cost in the senior center really is salaries. In the 2.5, when we did our budget, everything was level except for salaries getting their 2.5.
Yep,
No extra hours.
right. And then, so then the senior center is at 37,335 and historical commission at 400. We just rolled this over. We didn't get anything from, is it Connie?
Right.
Yeah,
Then we'll go down to the highway department. Salaries, 87,221. Total payroll is 271,195. There is a question for me around traffic control related to tree warden. They, Pam sent a new tree warden budget the other day. I don't know, did everybody get that, or Doug, did you see that?
You know, I saw it and I don't even think I printed it.
And so remember when we had, I think when he was in, where there was a question about who was going to do traffic control? Would it be kind of embedded in the project, or would it, be part of the, the tree work to include that? Or was it, part of the highway?
Right.
Or so it looks like Dana resubmitted something with an additional 29,000 for traffic control. So these two other lines, expenses and salary, are the same. And then with an additional 29,000.
Now,
Is that, go ahead. Doug.
the issue on the tree work was whether or not to break that piece of it out into a separate article. That's the gypsy moth damage, as opposed to the ordinary tree work which goes on. Because this, if we keep this money in the operational budget, it's going to have this incredible blip, and then hopefully next year it drops back down to the normal level. So I mean, I would advocate for taking taking the gypsy moth costs out of the expense line, and putting that in a separate article.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, and
We
that
have
gets
to
to
make sure
your
track it that way
together.
too.
Yeah,
Carol,
yeah.
back to 48.0, building expense for the highway department. At our meeting, he talked about the possibility of increasing that from 11,895 up to 15,000. Did we ever get anything back from them on that?
I'm sorry, what line, Alan?
Oh, he went ahead. He's ahead.
48.0.
Oh, you're ahead
You're
now.
way ahead of us, Alan.
Yeah,
No.
slow down there.
Did you already cover highway?
We're on tree warden, which is 41.
Oh, all right.
It's kind of embedded, it's embedded in the highway.
Yeah.
So Carol, how are we gonna break out this 139? I guess that's the question. Are we gonna break it out as a separate article? Let it stand on its own? And then are we still gonna break that number down so people know how much goes into the trees, how much for traffic control, et cetera? How's that all gonna work?
Well, we'd have to have Dana break it out because it looks like when I look at the account, it's all, it doesn't specify, kind of gypsy moth problem because he's got, we have a regular need obviously for some tree warden expenses. So he'd have to tell us, it looks like it's 100,000 that he's planning on, we could make that assumption it's $100,000 more plus the 29,000 for the traffic control. So 129 total, but I would break it out into both of those amounts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if
and
you,
that's a discussion they would have to have with the select board as well in terms of,
Yeah.
the
And
format.
let me point out that the last year's expense, the 39,850, included some of the problems from the gypsy moth. The traditional number had been more like the previous year, where they're around $15,000.
actually, I'm going to disagree with you, Alan. My memory of the meetings a year ago is the jump from 14,000 to 39,000 had to do with the OSHA regulations
Right.
and not being able to use the DPW people as much. And
I
then
stand
came
corrected.
back at the fall town meeting and asked for the big money.
Okay, I stand corrected. You're right.
So I'm thinking that $40,000 will be the new normal when the blip is over.
So Doug, didn't the 100,000 find itself into a separate article at the town meeting?
In the fall, it did, yes.
So is that what we're gonna ask the selectmen to do the same thing?
That's what I would suggest.
Okay. We need to take a vote on that, or is that just something that we're gonna do? We lost Carol.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Once we get our green sheet, refined to the point where we're satisfied with it, then we have to coordinate with the select board in terms of the warrant. And the select board is the one that establishes the warrant. I mean, we can request, but they establish.
Okay.
Just looking here.
Want to move forward now? I don't know where Carol went.
Carol just texted me. She's trying to get back in. All right, why don't we move along to public grounds 42.0. What's with the 2009 41,000? I mean, the 2019 41,000 expenditures. Is that just a typo, probably?
No,
you
they
took the
they
salary out.
salary out. They put
Oh,
the salary
okay.
up under departmental payroll.
Okay, right. Okay, so that's fine. Highway maintenance.
I'm back.
You
Welcome
know,
back, Carol.
Carol's back.
Yeah, damn
We
Wi-Fi.
didn't get too far. We're on 43.
You're not done? Come on.
We're on
Carol?
43, highway maintenance.
Carol,
Alan, go ahead, Alan.
one thing to point out under highway maintenance, last year, he had proposed $500,000. This was taking some of that money putting into the regular budget, where before the last 5 years or so, it had been by a borrowing, and we spent around 500,000 a year. Because of the tightness, we suggested putting it down to 250. And we didn't want to do that, but we did it just to make things fit. Now he's kept 250, but we said we want to go back up to the higher amount sometime soon, because we think we need to spend that money on highway. Now we only have 250 in here now, but this is discretionary, I guess, on our part. How we feel about, should we go back to the 500,000 per month, per year, like we had been spending for maybe 5 or 6 years?
In my opinion, not at this time.
Not this year.
I mean, the previous paving project was done on a debt exclusion.
Except last year, we put it in the budget last year,
Right,
because the debt exclusion had already
Right.
expired.
but that's the reason that we dropped the number down, is so we didn't want to carry the large number going forward, even though the
Yeah.
work is out there and needs to be done. I mean, this is a discussion, again, that's going to have to be had with the select board, whether or not to carry a larger line item in the paving, or whether or not to carry a modest number and put on a debt exclusion vote for, additional projects. And I think in the current environment, I think I know the answer to that question.
Another piece of the puzzle, excuse me, another piece of the puzzle is the Chapter 90 money. The state's been in pretty good shape up to now, and the Chapter 90 money has been getting generous, so he's been able to get a lot of work done. If state revenues drop and Chapter 90 money goes away, then he may be asking for more money, but I think I'd wait till he asked.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that. I just brought up the issue.
yeah. I think it's a point worth flagging, and it's something we're going to have to revisit as we get down to the final stretch on this. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Right.
I'm looking at general highway expense 44, and I can't remember
Very.
why that's in it, the lower number.
This is when he reorganized and put all of the labor costs into one line item instead of splitting it up and putting it in all these different line items.
That's right.
Yeah, last year he moved the accounts.
All right, so that
Used
that
to-
number
we used-
that
Yeah, we used to pay salary, have payroll coming out of both highway maintenance, public grounds, and general highway expense. Now it's just all one DPW payroll.
Just out of curiosity, so if some storm drain collapses, where does he get the money to fix it? General highway expense? That's not a lot,
No, it
because
was
that's
the
not a lot of money. Pardon?
highway maintenance, or he could use his Chapter 90 money, but it would be highway maintenance.
Neither of those numbers seem like a lot of money.
Nope.
No, my recollection of the discussion was that by reorganizing his lines in this fashion, it gave him a little bit more flexibility as to where to draw the money from for different projects.
Right.
And that the type of work you're talking about, like a storm drain collapsing, a large portion of that's labor, and we're paying that out of the labor account. So it's basically just materials he needs to buy.
Okay, just a question. That's it. Thank you very much.
All right, snow and ice, 108. Cliff, I noticed that on the snow and ice deficit on the revenue sheet, you put a little over $7,000 for this year. And do we know, has he done his final purchase for the salt for the year?
I thought he had. I know he's got a big load in. If he does another one, that could be another 13, 14,000.
But even at that, I mean, that's a remarkable winter
Oh.
for us.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, our labor costs were very low this year. He did use a lot of salt, but really we had nowhere near the payroll costs we normally have for snow and ice.
Didn't have any snow or ice.
Right.
Good timing for that.
And we don't care about people that have to drive up South Road and Chapin Road anyway, so.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
46, contract services. those are fixed costs that he has. Highway accounts, 18,000. Building expenses, 48.0.
Oh,
11,000.
that's where I came up with this question. He was thinking about adding some money to that and taking it up to 15,000. I don't know if we ever heard anything back from him on that.
Wasn't that contingent on the addition being put on?
I think
The
so.
assumption was that there'd be more utilities with more building.
Correct. Aren't they going ahead with putting the addition on?
As far as I know. So should we increase that line item, that 48 to 15,000?
Why don't we ask him?
Okay. Okay. Moving on to animal inspection. $5,307. Emergency management, 8,000. Where does that money go? Is that through fire and police?
Both. Yeah, and they buy some supplies from it.
Yeah.
And Dick, doesn't Jeff hit that for something personally?
Most of that money goes to Jeff's salary.
Yeah.
It's
Or-
how many different accounts does that come out of?
Why does that happen, Dick? Just out of curiosity.
Because that must be the contract the selectmen signed. They're really good at hiding sources.
So I might look at a salary of $60,000 and he's actually getting paid $65,000.
I think you're,
I just threw those numbers out.
Only 50,000 off.
Yeah. He's,
Yeah.
Yeah, that extra is a little bit more than that.
yeah.
Carol had asked me for a breakdown last year on that. A significant amount of his salary comes out of the emergency management and a fair amount comes out of employee benefits.
So the bigger his department, the more money he makes.
Well,
I don't know. You have to look at his contract. You have the right to ask for that contract if you'd like.
Just curiosity.
yeah. And one of the things I was saying is that, if they lose dispatch, is there a corresponding reduction? Because he was looking for a corresponding increase when we were going to bring in the East Long Meadow dispatch of 8,000. So if that's the value.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
You bring it up.
Well,
Did.
actually, some of the dispatchers are alleging that he will get a position on the board of Westcom, and we'll probably have to pay him to do that job.
Yeah.
Can we request, or can we move the money that actually goes to him to the police department budget?
Well,
Not
he
sure the
is
question.
chairman of the emergency management group, so I suppose you could.
Well, yeah, because, or some kind of label it as that or as salary or split it out or something, and anything that is kind of hidden, I think should be brought forward in clearer information.
I'm not sure how, well,
I'm just trying to think procedurally how we would do that. If both fire and police draw from that account for various and sundry things, how do you put in a line item for those items unless you know specifically what they're going to be? And my sense
So
is,
what is, so for the management, how do they decide what he gets for part of his salary out of that account?
I would
It's
assume
not-
it's the terms of the contract.
So why don't you move some of that into the police department and add it as a salary line?
And reduce this line.
And do is the other part fire? Is it just two parts of that line?
I don't know, Dick?
I'd have to go back and look at the ledgers. I don't remember.
I don't remember
Who knows
anybody.
what that really means? Because I don't.
This seems to me if the fellow makes $100,000 a year, it ought to say police salary, police chief salary, $100,000. It shouldn't be spread
Right.
out over 2 or 3 line accounts. It just should be one account. And I can't imagine that he'd have a contract that would actually be specific where his money came from. So I just don't understand how that happens, but we're not going to solve it tonight. To me,
Right.
it just goes to one other larger issue.
Well,
Yeah,
think
I'm happy rolling it in too, but it should be made known that, you know, his salary isn't just 100,000. He's also getting 4,000 from here and 4,000 from there and whatever the numbers are.
why don't you start by asking for a copy of the contract?
Yeah,
And-
I'll do that.
And in general, I get very frustrated with people who get to spend money out of accounts that aren't under their jurisdiction. And in general, the police department hits employee benefits a lot harder than anybody else because they've got all these interesting sick time buybacks and sick time bonuses that are paid out of employee benefits. It doesn't show up as part of the entire police budget. Kind of frustrates me.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's right. I think that's playing games, and it's not, what's the word I want to use?
It's a
Transparent.
lack of transparency.
Thank you. Transparent. Thank you.
So Dick, is there anybody else that, that salary isn't fully represented in the line, in the budget? Any other position? Because, I mean, to be fair, if we shouldn't just single out the chief just because we know that if there's something else happening, we should be asking the same questions.
Well, I'm trying, there are other police department issues like that. I'm having a hard time remembering thinking of any other thing, anything outside of the police department.
Mhm.
So would it be anybody, Dick, who has a contract? When I mean contract, it's different than a collective bargaining agreement. So if all the police officers are on a collective bargaining agreement, that's different.
No,
The
the highway department superintendent has a contract. It all
All right.
comes out of his salary line.
So
with
does
the
he get
exception of his,
extra
cell
money?
phone reimbursement.
So does he get extra money when he plows snow?
No,
Okay.
I don't know how they got him to sign that contract, but it's very beneficial to the town.
Okay, so that's my point. So my point would be, Carol needs to ask for the contract and then we can ask some questions.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you might ask for the patrolman's contract as well, as long as you're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
That might be somewhat helpful, but if a collective bargaining agreement, you know, however they decide how the different parts of the agreement, like you said, there's buyback, there's incentives, whatever those things might be, that's very difficult to figure out because it's going to end up in either one line, like a employee's benefit line. The only other thing to do would be to have every department have its own employee benefit line. What's the true cost of the highway department? What's the true cost of the police department? When you throw everybody together, that's a different story. But that's something that, you know, we're not going to solve again tonight.
And that
I
would get
agree.
very messy.
We should look at that because that's, you know, better showing a true cost when you're putting the benefits in there as well.
Yeah, and you know, when you have a catch-all account that goes across departments like county retirement or employee benefits, if it's being used proportionally by all the departments, then, you know, that's fair. That's fair. And that's reasonable to the townspeople. If one particular department is hitting it disproportionately, it seems to me that that's where you've got a transparency problem.
Okay.
I'll start by asking for those.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Traffic control, 15,000, that's a $5,000 increase. And hopefully that will be enough. 52 dog officer, total of 13,448. You know, Carol, do you know why Kristen has the damage fund highlighted?
Because we didn't get a new number, it's just, I had to roll it over.
Just carrying that forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
She had
Um,
highlights in and missing places, and when she put in new numbers, she didn't remove the highlight yet, but that's just administratively.
Fire department. Uh,
What's the reason for the fire department salaries with a $30,000 increase? Is there another person, more hours? What is it?
Chief,
No, the chief's by himself. No?
I think it may be the other officers that they were going to pay. They were
Yes.
going to do call duty, but I'm uncomfortable with the presentation here because everybody's gonna have exactly the same question Paul did. Why are we giving these guys such a big raise? I'd love to see a separate line item under chief salary or whatever.
The chief's salary is 28,000, but there's got to be a reason why that 30,000, the 144 went to 170.
I'm sorry, I
Is
thought I
that
just
for
said
the,
that. They were going to be paying the deputy chief and lieutenants some kind of money is what they talked about. We talked about it a little bit at the fall town meeting. So I'm assuming the difference is that, but I'd love to see it in a separate line item.
Yeah, so what the difference appears to be is it's 2.5% on the three current folks, the supervisor and the two firefighters. And then there's an additional $10,250 for fire officers. So I
That's
think,
still, that doesn't seem to still make,
let me
you
just
said-
see.
so you got 144 and you got 2.5% of that?
Yep, which,
weren't they
Right.
also gonna hire some, fill-in type people when?
and then
there
they've got
was
then they've got a temporary helpline for an additional 10,000.
Okay.
So there you go. I think that might do it.
And what's the, I don't think I was around for this presentation. What's the fire chief, how many hours was that, or what did that involve?
The fire chief, they don't have hours in the request, so I don't have an explanation of hours.
It just seems pretty low, but I'm not sure what the duties are.
Oh, it's a part-time job, and this is the first time we've had anything there. It has always been a volunteer job before.
Yeah, I know it's been on the agenda for the select board over the last couple of weeks. I think it makes sense. We can ask them what the status is of that.
At
Yeah,
their last meeting, they proposed to move forward with interviews. They have, I don't know, something like 5 or 6 candidates back, but 2 of those are from out of town, and the request or the asking if people are interested didn't say it was only a part-time job, so they don't think somebody from Brooklyn's going to bid on it when they know it's only a part-time job.
Currently, they're paying the interim chief, I think it's 15 hours a week at $25 an hour, but none of the other officers are being paid this year so far.
And so, Carol, you said, so the 2.5% of 144 is about $3,700. And what's the rest of the money?
So then, it looks like there's 10,250 for the officers. And then 10,000 for temporary help for shift coverage.
Okay.
I wonder if that temporary help should go in a separate line.
It
It's
is,
not regular salary.
right, it is on how they presented it, but they, they rolled it all up into just the fire department salaries. All of those,
We're talking about FD salaries.
right, right.
Yeah, at 170,550.
That includes, from their request, 5 different lines. The 3, like I said, the 3 full-time folks, the temporary help, and the officer pay.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, look at the increase over the last 2 years. It's a $110,000 increase. This is exactly the kind of salary creep that people were concerned about.
Mm-hmm. Right, overall.
What was the number in equipment?
Equipment,
53.4?
they've got 16.5 in equipment. Well, that's the number we're carrying forward.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yeah, that's a request.
No, the presentation, their request had that under two different lines, and they did this just joined together. I guess Christine just joined them together. Well, I suggested she join them together. But
Okay.
it was, a 16,500 is a correct addition of two different lines that they had requested.
No, no, I don't think so, Alan. I think the way it's presented in the request is personal protection is 16.5, and then there's a separate one for EMS supplies that they thought they wouldn't need if they accepted the ambulance contract under the fire department. So I have a question about whether they still need those EMS supplies at 3,000 if we're going with action, if they need those supplies for, you know, the car that they're running. It
So
didn't
a
link.
general question on this. If we go with action and there's a 911 call, will they call both action to respond and the fire department to respond? Right now, if there's a 911 call, the fire department gets called to respond, the police department gets called to respond, and then they order an ambulance on from another town since we don't have one. But with a action ambulance right at the police station, they'll probably be the first to be able to get to a call. And would there be a decrease then in fire department cost because they wouldn't have to go there? Or would they still go there? I don't know.
Yeah, and we don't know how fast they'd get there if it's going to be dispatched from Chicopee. So I don't know.
No, it's not dispatch in Chicopee. It's Chicopee does the dispatch.
Yeah. I don't think any of us have the answer to those questions, Alan. That's
We
you
should
know,
ask,
very-
we should ask the
that's very
selectmen.
it's very operational.
No, we should ask the selectmen. There's the
There-
potential.
I
There's
can
the
guarantee you
potential
that's
for
not a
fire
question that anybody's asked, if there's a reduction in cost if action's there. I'm sure that's not been fully vetted.
I can't imagine anybody would be able to figure that out.
Well, it depends what the protocol is. Right now, the protocol is you order an ambulance from out of town, you send the fire department there, and you send the police department, all three. But if you have an ambulance in town, my question is, do you still need to send fire department when the ambulance from action will probably get there first?
Well, Alan has a point. That $65,000 line item for call reimbursement, the vast majority of that money is being spent on medical calls.
Yeah.
So a question, is there any reduction in call reimbursement or other expenses by using action?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
All right, can we finish up here?
Yeah. I'm getting hungry.
Yeah. Forest fire control, I still don't know why we carry a separate line for that, but we have for years. Board of Health, 52,311. That looks like a straight 2.5% increase.
Yep.
Water District, 10,000. Police. The total requested
The police number is keeping dispatch there because they haven't decided on that. So it includes dispatch.
in the
Yeah.
general salaries.
Well, in the whole police department, it's more than just general salaries. There's a couple of other line items that he would reduce if the dispatch goes elsewhere.
All right, well, there's nothing we can do with this until we know what their decision is
Right.
on dispatch.
They've deferred at least to next week, just FYI, I got a text.
Oh, defer.
There you go.
Mhm.
All right, well, then we defer to next week as well.
Next.
Other police accounts, 58.0, $3,836. Dropping down the regional schools.
Does that include that money that they want to charge us kind of offline that you told us about?
No, it does not. I'm looking at the sheet here, and it looks like the total on the regional school district is incorrect.
I thought this is the number I saw that you gave to
Well,
her to put in.
But Alan, if you look at the sheet, it has the assessment number at 7,500,000, and then it has total regional 7.7.
Now,
It's
ours,
not,
the
it's
updated
not
one is,
totaling anything up.
the updated one is different though, Doug. It has
Yeah,
the,
the update of 411, she made the total district the same as the line above. I don't know why it was higher
Oh,
before,
okay,
but it shouldn't
okay.
have
I'm
been.
looking at 410. Okay.
yep.
Yeah, 411, it's the same as the line above.
I
the
had,
assessment.
I had changed that, Doug, before she sent it out to the group, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's the number that's been voted by the school committee.
Mhm.
Government debt, those numbers are what they are. Cliff and Dick, Green Meadows is this going to be the last year, or we're going to have one more year? It'll be 2022 that we finish Green Meadows.
One more year, right, Dick?
Yeah, I think there's one more year. I noted it when I sent you the debt figures.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's one more.
Okay. The Minichog number is what it is. I wonder, should we take out the 70.9, the retro bond? That was that one-time adjustment. Should we take that line out, because there shouldn't be another one of those?
I agree. Take it out.
Yeah, I was going to take it out, but then because we were showing what was spent the previous year,
Yeah.
and I'd have to go back and also
I think
take
it-
out some other accounts that we didn't carry forward.
So maybe just leave it
I
there.
think if we're showing that year, I think we should leave it if we're showing that prior year.
Yeah, the way
Because
we're
otherwise
doing
the
it.
total won't.
Okay,
And just wait for that year to drop off of the sheet.
right. Now-
It'll kind of naturally fall off the grid.
Yeah.
Okay, couple of questions. If you'll find this easier, I will go back and put in at least one previous fiscal year per Paul's request. I may run out of room, but we can work on that. If I can get another fiscal year in there. And for information's sake, I might be able to squeeze in, since I'm home and got the time, I could squeeze in a year-to-date on the requested items. Would that help anybody?
Oh, yeah, that would be great. And you could probably do that by just maybe taking and make it at 90% instead of 100%. You can just squeeze the whole thing down.
Yeah, I mean, I can, it would be for you guys' information only. It wouldn't
Yeah.
be in the final report. We could delete the line in the
Right.
final report. But
So
if
help me
you
out a
think,
little bit if that would be helpful.
okay, yeah, no
Police
worries.
radio, the police radio, Dick, 317,000. Now, explain that to me one more time.
Okay, well, first of all, I was going off of Cliff's version and he went and deleted those.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Cliff's version, because we don't have to make that decision right now. We've got the police radio and the dump truck, which we did borrowing for. So it's 250 for the dump truck or something like that.
48. Yeah.
248 and the 317 or whatever. We did that in one short-term note. And so we do not yet have to, we have to make some payment on it, I would think, in good conscience. But we get to decide as late as possible, and it could be even in the fall, how much to put on that. Even if we don't, at the annual town meeting, appropriate anything to pay that down, I would like to see it show up here so that it's a discussion item at least, so that you can say that we'll talk about it in September.
Okay, so if we were to include those two numbers, plus the ambulance number, not having any clue about how much savings we're gonna do on the dispatch. The
Yes,
budget,
we do. Yes, we do have a clue, and I have it all here.
but yeah, but we haven't included that in this budget, Alan.
No, no, we haven't, no.
Okay.
But I can tell you what it is.
Well,
so that we
okay,
can
so
see.
but my point is this, if my math is right, and it's probably not, but if it is, this budget is 8.2% higher than last year.
I didn't calculate that. Let me do what I put
Well,
through.
if I take
Oh,
15
Oh,
million,
excuse me, Paula, are you including ambulance, police, and radio?
I'm taking a look at,
Yes.
Doug, I'm taking a look at the bottom line,
Okay, no, that's fine. That's, yeah, I got
which
you.
is 15,274, and you subtract 14,1 from last year, and you take the one little adjustment that Carol had, which
Mhm.
was, Kristen made a double number. You take 11,000 off of that. The budget's up basically $1,160,000, and that equates to about an 8% increase.
But Paul, if they're proposing to put the ambulance in and do the dispatch, this budget shows the ambulance. It does not show the subtract for the dispatch. And I have those figures, as I said before, the police office chief has shown how much it would be, and his budget would come down $281,942. And Dick did what the overheads would come down. I put them all together. His figure is $121,916. So the total of that is just almost $404,000. So that should be subtracted from this because we say they say they're going to move the dispatch.
The
So
other
if you
thing,
do that, then you come up with a total of $14,873 and change. And let's see, well, and then I compare that with the revenue sheet that Cliff gave us. By the way, thank you, Cliff, for doing that revenue sheet.
I spent a lot of time on that, Alan.
the other
I
thing,
fully realize that a number of those are estimates, but you've been pretty damn good at doing those kind of estimates.
the other point, Paul, to your calculation is I cannot see a scenario we'd be paying the entire note for the radios and the dump truck off in 1 year. I would say a 3-year payback is comfortably aggressive if we can afford that.
Well,
So
I don't have any problem with any of what Alan said or what you just said.
right.
It's just, right now, it's an 8% plus increase. So all those adjustments need to be made by somebody pretty soon so we get an actual look at what this number is. Because if not, we're just wasting time. Because to me, if the selectmen want a certain budget or if the townspeople want a certain budget, and we've got revenue and we've got to figure out what the whole impact of this is going to be on the tax rate, all those decisions relative to the hot ticket items, ambulance, dispatchers, paying off the truck, paying off the radio, all that has to happen pretty soon. That's all my.
But Paul, I think we already know for sure that we're going to move dispatch. So the number is not going to be 15,274 and change. It's going to be 14,873 and change.
Excuse me, but Alan, until that actually happens, we can't take it into account until the decision is actually made.
Well, that's why the selectmen should give us some information. They said they were going to make a decision on dispatch tonight.
Well, they're not. So
And
According to
Alan,
Carol, they're not.
Alan, all I'm saying is, once that decision is made, I know you've got some great notes and there were some previous discussions. I want to know what someone is saying the number is now after that's all done. And somebody is going to stand by that number, whether it's Farnsworth or whether it's Bob Markle or the two of them. That's what I want to hear.
hey, Carol dropped out again.
Doug, can I put in one more thing on this?
Sure.
If you take the dispatch out away from this total we have here, and I said it's got 14,872,000 and change, and then compare that to the revenue estimate that Cliff did, that revenue estimate is 15,431 in rough number, which means it's that it's, that we have excess revenue, according to that estimate, of some $557,000. So our costs for this budget, not yet taking into account the, any items that are on the agenda as articles, we have an excess of revenue, according to Cliff's numbers, of $557,000.
Well, those are just projections, Alan. Don't go spreading that around because that's very, very premature.
And by the
Yeah,
way, I
don't-
put that in an email that recently went out to show that. If we're planning to pay out the radio and truck purchase over time, shouldn't we put that in as a 2 or 3 year, or you want to put it all in as 1 year?
Well, that's a decision that we don't have to make tonight.
No.
All right, Carol, you back?
I'm back, sorry.
He's back.
There you are. I think we have enough questions to get us through this week. How about if we approach both Bob and the selectmen and get answers as best we can to these different questions? We'll update the sheet to the extent that we can, and then meet again next Monday.
Okay,
That makes sense?
yep. And I'll revise the sheet during the week.
Okay.
Or is there anything else that we should be doing in the next week?
Are you going to just reach out to the chairman and the town administrator, or are you going to try to get a joint meeting with them?
Well, I was thinking of just sending an email, but
Yeah, I
Probably
think
more efficient.
I was thinking a list of questions because they're, they're going to have to do some research. They're not going to be, if we have a meeting, they're still going to have to say, well, we'll have to check with the fire chief. We'll have to check with building
Right.
inspector. So if we give them kind of the laundry list, I took some notes about what we were looking for and just get that off to them and tell them that we want that by, X date, then I think
Yeah.
that'll be the best approach.
Sounds good.
Sounds smart.
Carol? Most of the things we discussed tonight are to reduce expenses rather than increase them. I would just say, it looks to me like we're in pretty darn good financial shape, as both Cliff and Dick have been telling us for some time.
Yeah, but that doesn't translate into what they want us to do for the taxes. Because even on my revenue sheet, there's $1.2 million in taxes. So between the exempt debt and the 2.5 increase in property taxes and the estimated growth, there's $1.4 million in taxes that have to be included. So that's a
Yeah.
big bump. That's the concern.
that's why I don't want Alan going around saying we have this extra capacity because
I don't always say it to
that's
you.
taxes.
No, what I'm saying is, I don't think that, it looks to me like we can keep the tax rate the same, going into the latter half of 2021.
Well, I hope you're right, Alan, but I think it's premature to even make that statement. I think it's best if we refrain from making statements, keeping in mind that this is a public meeting, that people are going to listen to this tape, and whatever is said may end up in the paper. I think what we should do is we should proceed cautiously, knowing that there's a lot of unknowns.
Okay,
Gotcha.
Make sense?
Yep.
Yep.
Good for me. All right, everybody, next Monday, same time.
Yep, I'll
All
send
right.
another invite out.
We'll
Okay.
get
Sounds
something to
good.
eat.
Right.
We'll get something to eat, Carol.
Yeah.
All right, thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you. Bye.
Good night.
I
Bye.